rules.
He's
namely,
been taken absolute mick when it comes to Islam. And that absolute pee has been taken.
Dr. Peterson, I have a lot of questions that arise from your comments at the Balfour 100 event, your M103 video, your recent discussion with Ayaan Hirsi Ali, and your comments on Islam in the West in general. And in your comments, there's this common theme that one of these things is not like the other. You put the Judeo-Christian tradition on the one side and Islam on the other. Specifically, the, quote, complex problem of Islam, and the, quote, as a, quote, totalizing
Jordan
system.
Peterson has made some comments about the Islamic religion and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Comments that might seem a bit absurd.
Certain things, he's been taken absolute mick when it comes to Islam. Yeah? And that
Uttered by a high-end
absolute
academic.
pee.
Some comments that he has made, at least in my opinion, should have been a bit more true.
It's another example where you violate your own rules. The rules, namely, the rules to speak the truth, or at least don't lie, and be precise in speech. You violate your own rules. You're not precise here. This
With
is
all
inaccurate.
due respect,
For an intellectual.
Dr. Peterson has surely, without a doubt, benefited both the Islamic and the non-Islamic community immensely. But it seems like when it comes to portraying the Islamic belief system, he doesn't do it fairly. Now, whether it's speaking of Islamic topics with some sort of ignorance,
Problem number two for me, and again this may be a consequence of my ignorance which I'm trying to rectify,
or solely relying on interviewing people that don't quite represent Islam correctly, I think we as Muslims have been fed up with hearing these repetitive claims over and over and over again. Now, the media has already done a good enough job of misrepresenting this religion over the years.
Believe with the literal understanding of it, its history as written in Sharia books.
Or the draconian enforcement of Sharia law. Not content with the attempt to convert non-Muslims,
And surely
Islamists
enough,
stress
we
the
cannot
obligation-
afford as an Islamic community to deal with more false and unjust criticism. And since he has quite a big following, I think it would be important to stop these false accusations of spreading to more and more people. But hopefully it's all changed now. With the upcoming podcast between both Mohammed Hijab and Dr. Peterson himself, I truly believe that Dr. Peterson's eyes will open up to an entirely different perspective. And amidst this historical conversation that's about to take place, I thought it would be just the right time to highlight some of the comments that Dr. Peterson has made in the past, and clear some of the things that were falsely accused of this religion and its prophet.
في ذلك التأخير كل المطمع.
Fox News narrative, a term used interchangeably for unreliable, inconsistent, untrustworthy news, or fake news. Essentially, Fox News has been accused of being an unreliable and a pretty biased source. It's received criticism from many for having a strong conservative bias, and at times, problematic news coverage. Now, this news channel and the alike seemed like they have been targeting Islam and the Muslim population quite heavily over the last couple of years.
Still doesn't answer the question, why are people coming to this country in the name of Islam killing Americans? And don't you think you should pause?
But well, you might say, then what does this have to do with Jordan Peterson himself? A lot, actually. Because even though he's classified as a high-end academic who uses rational arguments when it comes to his conversations or debates, and is accredited for his reliability and authenticity when it comes to the usage of his sources and facts,
that's your source of
as soon as he starts to
emotion.
open up about his beliefs and opinions towards Islam, it becomes a totally different story. You know, it's like he's spitting out Fox News sayings all over again. And that's one thing, because whilst he accuses our Prophet peace be upon him in a very unprofessional manner, he also admits to his ignorance when it comes to matters like this.
Problem number two for me, and again this may be a consequence of my ignorance.
Even though throughout this clip he keeps saying that he's ignorant to protect his honor and his integrity.
Hopefully I'll get an opportunity to talk to them. I would like to know if what I think is wrong.
Or his whatever it is he's trying to protect.
Because if it's wrong, it's important that I know it's wrong.
But the truth of the matter is, you are making so many assertions. If you're ignorant, you should really not say anything at all about this situation.
And trust me, I do appreciate his honesty and his genuinity, but what I don't is the fact that he comes out and talks about how he lacks certain knowledge when it comes to the Islamic belief system and the character of the Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him, and then proceeds to speak ill of him. Dr. Peterson has put out several claims regarding Islam, whether it was that states occupied by Islam are not economically productive,
States dominated by Islam are not economically productive.
or that scientific enterprise emerged only in Western Europe,
Only emerged in one place. It emerged in Western Europe, essentially.
or that Islam is basically a political system.
But I'm really stumbling with Islam. It's really hard for me to see it as other than a primarily political
There's one
system.
accusation that Jordan Peterson has made that I want to focus on more than any other. One that truly annoyed me.
This may be a consequence of my ignorance, which I'm trying to rectify. Muhammad was a warlord. I don't know what to do about that fact.
It's not like it's the first time that anyone that's not quite familiar with Islam and the story of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, has come out and called him a warlord or a violent individual. But why is it, if you've noticed, that some of those very people, those people that criticize him, peace be upon him, totally disregard the biblical texts that infer to violence? Those texts in the Bible, like, for instance, in Numbers 31. When Moses commands to do the following after a particular battle. Now kill all the boys, and kill every woman who has slept with a man, but save for yourselves every girl who has never slept with a man. Why? Do they not view this as violent? Or do they not view this as... Or is it because that it's only written in the Quran that it automatically becomes awful and disgraceful? Now, of course, we as Muslims are not in line with what has been said in this chapter, because we know very well that a prophet like Moses, peace be upon him, would never say something like this. And with all that being said, let me add on. What is it with this hypocrisy?
We will not waver.
This contradicting nature.
We will not tire.
Where the West is totally fine with invading, destroying, killing, taking over other countries and views it as spreading justice and as educating the savages.
We will not falter, and we will not fail.
When it comes to Islam and fighting to only defend oneself, then that becomes a violation. Something truly disgusting.
We as Westerners, when we bombed cities in the Second World War, we bombed Dresden and Berlin. I mean, we flattened them and we killed huge numbers of civilians, and yet we won the war and we are the heroes.
Think of it. How many times has the US, for instance, committed war violations, demolished entire countries and economies, but still view this as heroic? In reality, and one thing that has come to my attention is that whilst you've got individuals insulting and making a mockery of a person like Muhammad, peace be upon him, who has been named the most influential person in history by some non-Islamic authors, on the academic level of things, Western scholars or researchers tend to struggle when coming up with any sort of solid criticism of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his teachings.
Attract the opprobrium and the disapproval and the rejection of Western scholars. I just don't know quite what we're doing here, to be honest. So...
And that's what really annoys me. Jordan Peterson is a very intelligent and knowledgeable person that has excelled in fields of psychology and has made a significant impact on many people's lives. He's credible, trustworthy in any discussion that he's part of. But it seems like that's the case only in matters that don't have to do with Islam. But there's still some questions hanging in the air. Questions that we haven't answered yet. Is it true that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was involved in multiple battles and wars? Shouldn't the Prophet of God be promoting peace, love, and only compassion? And besides, is it true that Islam was spread by the sword? I have to be quite honest. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was in fact a leader, a commander of Islamic armies that fought against other tribes and other groups of people in the surrounding areas. And it's true that he was part of not one, but several battles. It's also true that he was at the forefront of every army, putting himself in danger and motivating others to do the same. Although, let me ask you this. What else could he have done? I'll explain. But first, let's travel back in time. It's the year 500 AD. And you're walking down a desert pathway in the middle of an Arabian market. Voices of intense bargaining and sellers chanting to attract customers surround you. But you are astonished at something. Your eyes direct you to a significant amount of slaves everywhere. Slavery seems so normalized. And then, in the mere distance, you notice a group of people gathering towards the end of the market. You walk in their direction, trying to avoid any particles of dust that come in your way, and you're able to reach one of the men in that huge huddle. You ask what the issue was, and he looks back at you with a raging temper. His face so red, and starts to complain to you about how his neighbor's wife just gave birth to a little girl. It's sounding really odd to you, but you can't help but squeeze yourself into that group of men to see exactly what the issue was. You're shocked. They're burying that female infant. They're burying her alive. Now, the Arabs in pre-Islamic Arabia invoked in many evil traditions, ranging from slavery at its extreme to female infanticide, or the burial of living female infants, which was due to either a fear of poverty or a fear of disgrace. Essentially, there was the fear of poverty that would result from providing for girls who were viewed as less productive than boys, and also, and most absurdly, a fear of shame, a fear of humiliation. It was not the pride to give birth to a female, rather, it was a disgrace. But Allah the Almighty addresses this by saying, when the sun is wrapped up in darkness, and when the stars fall, dispersing, and when the mountains are removed, and when the full-term she-camels are neglected, and when the wild beasts are gathered, and when the seas are filled with flame, and when the souls are paired, and when the girl who was buried alive is asked for what sin she was killed. And so, I may ask again, what other genius solutions would there be to stopping or replacing all these satanic structures and traditions? What other options, what other methods could this noble prophet have used in order to fight against this? Ladies and gentlemen, this prophet came by the will and with the help of the Almighty to abolish these awful things of the face of the earth. And that being said, he has come with peace, and peace only. But it's only until those evil individuals began to resist and try to force their culture upon everyone else, began to fight back in order to keep their atrocious traditions intact, began to torture those who refused to abide by these disgraceful laws, that the Prophet, peace be upon him, had to fight in order to defend his people and to spread the beautiful message of Islam. And again, with all that being said, and with everything he has accomplished with the help of the Almighty, he is still being called a warlord.